This program is powered by AIM Employers Association and Ogletree Deacons, a Feature Group USA production.
Hello, everybody. I'm Phil Brandt, President and CEO of AIM Employers Association. According to a 2024 pay scale compensation report, 52% of employees, 52% say they'd leave their job for better pay, even if they liked everything else. So is over half of your staff currently accepting offers? Strap in. I'm about to get fired up on This Week at Work.
This Week at Work is the only show to pack workplace news, practical HR solutions, and timely insights into every 30-minute episode.
How do you pay people so you have a high level of confidence they're going to stay and not be recruited away because of compensation? People are able to be attracted away because many of our pay strategies over the last 10, 15 years have led us to paying at midpoint. What many employers are doing when they don't actually have a strategy and they're waiting to see what the market does around them and then move with it, they're making adjustments to the competition instead of making adjustments in which the competition can't beat them.
Don't forget to download today's key takeaways and spark change in your workplace. All this and more on This Week at Work.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Bert, good morning. How are you today?
Good morning, Phil. I'm doing well. I'm dealing with computer glitches aplenty this morning.
Yeah, well, our organizations have to do everything they can to keep out the bad guys, and it makes it really hard on us, and I consider you one of the good guys. But just like our workplace policies, sometimes we design them for the bad guys and punish the good guys with them, and we won't get into that today. That's another discussion, but I want to welcome to the program our fan favorite, Mikey Mack, is joining us today. Good morning, Mikey.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Yeah, great. We're happy to have you. Bert, Mikey, and I have been traveling across the Midwest through Illinois and Indiana and back in St. Louis today. And as you know, Melissa Pesch is going to be part of our program on pay strategies and compensation. And we've had some great conversations. We're going to continue that conversation here this morning since we have Mike part of the program. I'd like to get your opinion, Mike and Bert. 52% of employees say they would leave for better pay, even if everything else was okay. What do you think about that number?
I don't think that number really doesn't surprise me too much. I think that what keeps people from leaving is just complacency, and we all know change is the hardest thing to do. And I guess that number really doesn't surprise me, that if the opportunity presented itself, people would leave. But a lot of times people don't seek out those opportunities or pursue the opportunities just out of complacency.
Sure. And I think it's more than just the market. It's not an issue that am I competitive? It's also how I'm treated within the organization, and also how much do I understand how my pay is determined, because that lack of understanding creates lack of trust. And immediately I start looking elsewhere because I'm not really sure if I'm being treated the right way.
Yeah, I know you see a lot of that, Mike, as a result of the programs that you put in. And I'm a little suspicious of these types of polls. I know we don't do this necessarily at AIM, where you're trying to create a result to get a click, but I think this is creating a headline to get a click, because I don't know if these are White Castle workers or your part-time McDonald's workers. They don't disclose what 52% of their surveyed participants are talking about in this group. But I got to believe that the key thing I'm focused on, if everything else is done right. Now, if everything else is done right, I don't know if they mean, well, what does better pay mean? A penny? Or is it, thousands of dollars? And this is where I think this headline is a little bit misleading, and why I think we can bring them a little bit better information on what we know works And we know how to avoid strategies like that. And I mean, those are the things that kind of get me fired up, Nick, when we do that. I look at that and these misleading statements. So think about.
Phil, let me just interject real quick. Just keep in mind that the source of that report is Pay Scales, Pay Factors, a company that is selling salary survey data to organizations to be able to review if they're competitive or not. So you have to really consider the source as well.
Little inherent bias, perhaps, huh?
Yeah, that is for sure. I mean, that just goes with the headlines of every news source. But I mean, I understand the point, and it's a point worth talking about, because the question is, well, what do you have to do in order to keep people in the workplace if you have a good pay strategy? And this is where, Mike, I don't know if cash is king, if I can use that phrase when it comes to pay today, versus all the other workplace accommodations that we make. But I do know that in today's world, how we pay people and what we benchmark against and what we used to call competitive, which often got interpreted as that 50th percentile, that is changing. You and I have been talking about that the last few days with our audiences, and that's changing. It used to be, well, I had my absolute must retain, highest, most important positions. I might pay them a little better, but everybody else was just going to be in that 50th percentile market. And now you kind of have to break your workforce down into those that you have to retain because of their inherent knowledge, those that are just difficult to replace, and then those that maybe I can replace and I can hire and bring up to speed quickly. And you may have to have 3 strategies or 4 strategies within your own business in order to maintain a competitive position. I know you're seeing more of that. I'm seeing more of that.
Sure. A lot.
Can you talk a little bit about that, Mike?
Yeah, I think one of the areas, and we've talked about this past week, to understand is the difference between being competitive and being fair, right? So when we talk about being competitive, we're talking about the value of the job, right? In terms of, what are we starting people at that come into the workplace, or is that job's value competitive in the market versus how an individual is paid within that pay structure? That's where we get more into the issue of fairness in terms of what are you using to determine where somebody should be placed within that competitive range. So
now, somebody like Bert likes to argue that point of fairness. Now he makes a good living arguing fairness.
Right. And it gets confused, right? Everyone, you ask an employee, are you competitive? They may say no, but then again, it may be that the real issue is they're not being paid fairly. And so there's a difference in that. And we're starting to try to clarify that distinction as we're working with our clients.
Yeah, I would agree. Bert, any insights from you when it comes to that? You get a chance to look at these cases just from another angle than we do sometimes.
Yeah, Mike's added he's added in a new C for me. We always talk about consistency and fairness. Now it's consistency, fairness, and competitiveness.
Right.
But in all seriousness, I do think that making sure that people are fairly compensated, if they're treated fairly, that helps you avoid claims.
Yeah. I've been taking a lot of flack lately because I've been saying you're going to have to pay people well. And I don't even, you think, what does well mean? I'm like, well, I got to take a look at your workforce design, and I got to take a look at how people are positioned today in your competitive market. And then I can answer the question of well. But it's not just, well, here's a number that means pay them well.
Right.
Because you may have some people that paying them well might be because of your design. I can pay them a little bit below the midpoint of market. But there are other people I may need to pay at the 75th or 80% of the market based upon the role and the duties that they have. And the other thing that's getting more and more difficult that we add to this is the ability to pay people appropriately, if we don't like the word well, and we don't like the word of, we don't like midpoint, but to pay people in a way that they feel valued, when they have these things called hybrid roles. More and more, very few people have a traditional role. I do this in a very narrow boundaries of rules. It's, well, I kind of do HR, and then I kind of do some finance, and every now and then I jump on the fork truck and I load trucks if I have to. It's whatever it takes to get the job done.
Right.
And as crazy as those examples sound, I mean, they're true, Mike. We see it.
They are. They are.
And how do you benchmark and make sure that person feels that they're being paid competitively? And I know that's what you spend a lot of time the last couple of days talking about, but Mike, in 30 seconds, talk about that for me real quick.
Yeah, I think basically when we do have, and we're seeing the same thing, more and more hybrid roles, because we don't have the ability to fill a position, so we take part of that job and we kind of farm it out throughout the organization. Number one, we then need to update our job descriptions. We need to be able to incorporate that so that the employee understands this is now your job. This is what we're expecting from you. So they have that document, which is very important as a source document that we then use and others will use to then look at the market. But then when you look at the market, you have to look at a hybrid market, right? So you have to look at what percentage of the job is in this area, what percentage in another area, and be able to apply that to your market data so that you get a better picture of what the real value of that position is. So there's a lot of art that's mixed into that science when you're doing the market pricing on hybrid jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that's a big part of what you do, and it makes what you do a very special skill, and it takes a lot of experience to do. But the question really is you got to stop reacting to the market changes and start creating conditions the market can't beat. And what does that mean? So for that reason, I got two questions for us today, guys. If we can transition on to that, producer Nick. All right. So here's my two questions. The first question is, and Mike, welcome back to the program. What we're going to do, Bert knows the rules. I'll ask a question.
This is easy,
three.
Mike. This is easy. This is
okay.
easy.
I like to set Bert up for success. So I give him three answers. All three answers are right to various degrees, and we just talk about the one that we like the most.
Okay.
And when Bert can't decide, he goes, "I like all three of them, and here's why." But here's the first question: is what changes should an organization consider making to their pay structure to prevent poaching in today's hybrid workforce? So we're really talking about poaching. The first response is prioritizing key roles, real-time market benchmarking, and hybrid role valuation. Hybrid, we just talked about that in that sense. The second response is incorporate career pathing in your workplace. And the third one is be transparent with total reward systems and value. All right, Mikey, which one do you like best?
I like them all.
Yeah, see there? See how it works?
See how easy this is, Mike? I mean, I told you, this is easy stuff.
And part of it's going to be really tied to your culture, though, in terms of your organization. Obviously, if I'm in the midst of creating more and more hybrid roles, then that question about being sure I have the right data is going to be very important. If I'm hiring more younger people, the Gen Zs and millennials coming into the workplace, then my career pathing is going to be extremely important because that's what they're all looking for in terms of a retention strategy. And then, of course, it really comes down to where you are in your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Bert, any one that you favor over the other?
I think all three are equally important and are all part of a good, thorough, and well-rounded system for evaluating compensation.
Yeah, I know the career pathing one is sometimes easier to do in some organizations than it is in others, right? The bigger your organization is, the more dynamic it is, the easier it is. And sometimes one thing that can help employers is when they're looking to select a candidate is to select candidates and do the right assessments and be transparent in the limited mobility up, but for people who like mobility across an organization. And that's where you can get into someone that really likes a variety in their job and isn't looking to stay narrowly focused. So
Right.
that one can be important if you start your hiring process with that in mind.
Yeah, it's also an important strategy, the career pathing, in terms of the fact that we may not be able to find replacement employees at a higher skill level. So the ability to home grow the talent within the organization gives you really an advantage in terms of being able to fill those positions rather than always look for someone who already has that higher level of skill.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Let's go on to the second question here, because I do want to get to Lawyer on the Clock. We got some interesting things to talk about here. So question number 2, how might an organization design a compensation strategy today that keeps pay out of the exit interview 3 years from now? All right. So we don't want people saying, well, I'm leaving for more pay, just as our survey from PayScale suggested.
Right.
So the first one is build flexible tiered comp plans aligned to evolve skill sets and internal equity. Number 2, structure policies that might emerge legal standards and pay equity, documentation and cross-state employment laws. Bert, you probably like something like that. And then 3, reinforce the role of the manager in communicating your total rewards programs. Bert, let's start with you this time. We'll let Mikey finish it up.
While all of those answers are good, I'm actually going to go with 3 and expand on that. Phil, we've oftentimes on the program talked about, surveys that show that the number one reason why employees seek a union, it's not because of compensation. Compensation's usually in the middle. It's bad management. And I think that third answer there, that the managers are responsible for communicating to the employees the company's total rewards or total value proposition of working at the company, is absolutely critical. And it gets down to that key piece about manager supervisor communication. And I think that, if people are really truly happy at work, yes, they may leave for higher compensation, but they might also stay because they have a great place to work.
Yeah, I like that one before Mikey jumps in as well, because I do know the main reason people leave more than pay is their manager and leader, and the way the organization is managed overall. But that is something that business owners don't like. Mike, you talk about this for us, if you will, for a minute. I want to stay right with that thread. You tell a business owner, hey, we want to be transparent with our compensation, want to tell them what we're doing, how we're doing it, and even share kind of, the pay ranges and so forth. In large corporate America, they're accustomed to that.
Right.
You get into these medium to small businesses, they don't like doing that. But Mike, you're doing more of it all the time.
All the time, and I'm in sync with you guys. Number 3 is really the key, because regardless of whether you are viewed as being competitive or not, the more I understand about my program and my total rewards opportunity and how much I get that information from my supervisor and manager, which is critical, right? In terms of, do I trust the system? If I'm just getting something in the email or from HR, yeah, that's a program. But if I hear it from the person I work for directly, and I can ask them, do you understand this? Can you explain this? What do you think about that? It really builds that trust within the organization. And the statistics are out there. People leave supervisors. They may be attracted by the organization and pay initially, but they really do start thinking about leaving months before they give the notice because of the lack of communication and trust with their supervisor.
Yeah, and I think it starts and stops there.
Yeah, and I'll jump on something else right there. It's like we do see often in our business and other businesses, people end up leaving organizations for because they think the grass is greener on the other side, and the proverbial grass is the cash, the money,
Right.
and then they want to come back. once they get somewhere and they realize that, I left my job for a job I was happy at and took higher compensation, but I hate this new place.
Right.
And they're willing to trade that higher compensation to return to their old job. It does happen.
It does.
Yeah, absolutely. I can talk on this one all day from my experiences. It's chock full, as they say, of wonderful stories to learn from. All right, I think that's going to conclude our question and answers. But if you want to hear more from Mikey on this, there's still time to join our live online program. It doesn't start till 8:30 yet today. And if you go to the AIM website, that's AAIM. .org. You can get in AAIMEA.org, excuse me. Just type in pay trends and strategies, and that give you a link to join us online at 8:30 today. It's going to be a great program. And don't forget, while you're on the program here, you can download the Ready Aim Fire. That's Fire, Phire. I like it, Nick. Cheat sheet just by clicking the question mark icon.
All right, Bert, I'll mention here too on that is that if you download this now, it does have a QR code on there that will take you straight to registering for the compensation training that's happening here.
See, producer Nick, you're always showing off with your fancy stuff. I mean, that's why you're the best. I love it. Thank you, Nick. Bert, are you ready for Lawyer on the Clock?
We've got a lot to cover, yes.
Pull that lever, Nick.
Curious about a case that could wreck your workplace? Lucky for you, we have a lawyer on the clock.
Phil, last week the Supreme Court did not cooperate with us despite our best connections and best efforts to always get them to issue their decisions timely for the show. Right after the show last week, they came out with a very, very significant decision. And so on June 5th, the Supreme Court rejected the heightened standards for discrimination claims from majority groups. We often refer to these cases as reverse discrimination claims. And we had been following this case on our program here. It's the case of Ames versus Ohio Department of Youth Services. And in that case, the plaintiff, a heterosexual woman, alleged sex and sexual orientation discrimination. And in a decision that was unanimous, which is very significant from this particular Supreme Court, and it was authored by Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, the Supreme Court held that plaintiffs who are part of a majority group cannot be held to a higher standard of proof in employment discrimination claims. And so this the court's decision really potentially opens the door to more lawsuits from plaintiffs who belong to majority groups. And so,
all right, so Bert, break that down real simply. What you're saying is there is no such thing as reverse discrimination now.
That I think that's really the case. There's really no more reverse discrimination. There's just discrimination.
Discrimination. That's right.
And what we've said on the program before is that what Title VII says is that you cannot consider the various protected statuses when making employment-related decisions. And so that applies across the board to everyone. And I think the Supreme Court absolutely got this one correct.
So if you were to make, so let's just for a second, if you were to make a decision based upon someone's status versus merit, therefore you are creating a scenario of discrimination is what that's saying.
That's correct. And so in this case, the plaintiff, a heterosexual woman, applied for and interviewed for a promotion. The department in Ohio instead offered her another job that amounted to a demotion with lower pay. She ended up taking that. The department later hired a gay man to serve in her prior role and promoted a lesbian woman to the position she had sought. And so she brought what would have been considered a reverse discrimination claim. She's in the majority group, not being gay or lesbian. And the court said that this is just potentially discrimination.
Just discrimination. So we're going to help people when they say, well, that's reverse discrimination. We got to get them out of the habit of that. It's just discrimination. Now, she could have been part of the 48% that just said, well, I'm going to stay. But the 52% would have said, well, I just want more pay and I'm going to leave anyway.
That's right.
That's
right.
And Phil, what the court was specifically wrestling with here was whether there should be a higher standard of proof in reverse discrimination cases. The Sixth Circuit, which is where this case came out of, it said, yes, there's a heightened standard. When you're a part of the majority group, you need to go beyond just regular proof. You need to really show some additional proof, show additional background circumstances that would tend to show that that you are being discriminated against as part of a majority group. And the court rejected that heightened standard.
Yeah, and I think it's significant that they had a unanimous decision.
I agree with you wholeheartedly on that.
Yeah, yes. Absolutely. That doesn't happen too often, does it?
No.
All right, what else you got there, Bert?
All right, so another case, and I can't give too much commentary on that because of my firm's involvement on it, but I want to talk about an Eighth Circuit case, which is where we're based here in St. Louis. The Eighth Circuit yesterday heard a case that probed the National Labor Relations Board's process in a Home Depot Black Lives Matter ruling. In that case, the Eighth Circuit panel questioned the process behind the NLRB's ruling that Home Depot illegally forced out a worker for displaying the letters BLM on their apron. And so this is kind of a significant decision. We've also been paying a lot of attention to this on the program. And in this case, Home Depot challenged the board's February 2024 ruling about what makes a worker's display regarding a social issue a protected action under the National Labor Relations Act, and the extent of the employer's rights to stop them from displaying such insignia. And from the questioning by the court yesterday, one of the circuit judges, Judge Loken, said he was very concerned by the discrepancy before the board's decision, which later found that the employee in that case took protected action by refusing to remove the mark in February 2021, and the complaint in which the Department of Justice or the NLRB asserted that the employee took protected action months earlier when they began the display. So it's a little bit of a nuanced legal issue that the court's wrestling with there. But again, I think this will, the significant piece is we're going to get some court guidance rather than just NLRB guidance on whether an employer can require employees to remove social action insignia from their uniforms.
Yeah, so this is going to be an interesting one because I know employers, they really do struggle with getting it right. They want to get, can I, shouldn't I? It's disruptive in the workplace. It's not attractive to my customers. It isn't aligned with our business politics, whatever it might be. There's a lot of angles that come to, and I think what I'm hearing you say, Bert, you were breaking up a little bit there, is that this person was involved in concerted activity prior to this, and now that this BLM written, if I remember it right, it was like a black marker written on the
apron.
On the apron, and whether or not the person, if I remember right, did they lose their job for not removing it? Is that what happened?
Yeah, I believe they actually lost their job because they refused to remove the BLM insignia. And, I think what it really turns on is whether the BLM insignia was being worn as part of just a general social movement, or was it being worn as part of protected concerted activity with respect to this employer's actions and policies?
Right. That's going to be a tough one. We'll have to keep our eye on that for sure.
Yeah.
Anything else, Bert?
Yeah, we'll cover one more, Phil, and I'll try to do this one quickly. And just a heads up, because I think we're going to start to see more and more cases like this. And in light of the Supreme Court's decision that we talked about as the first item today in the AAIMS case. This is just an early one for us to keep our eye on. There was an employee, a Wisconsin man, and he is now asking the EEOC to review his case. He says he was fired for refusing to use preferred pronouns that conflict with the person's biological sex, which is, he claims, forces him to choose between his livelihood and his religious faith. And so, again, this individual has filed a religious discrimination claim with the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, which is the equivalent of our Missouri Commission on Human Rights or the Illinois Department of Human Rights. And he's asking the EEOC to review his case. He claims, again, this is just from his perspective, that he had been a model employee during his 5 years of employment, received several positive performance reviews and promotions, looked forward to a long career, and that was until, as he said, the company pulled him into a meeting with HR and confronted him about his refusal to use someone's preferred pronouns. And so he's really arguing here that he's being forced to choose between his livelihood and love for God, and that he was ultimately fired for not using those pronouns. And
any idea, Bert, what religious practice the individual would claim?
I believe he claims Christianity.
Okay, and also any idea on the organization itself? Is it a government contractor? Is it a government agency or anything like that you can tell me?
I do believe that they do some government contracting work. They are definitely not a government agency. And so I'm going to refrain from naming the employer at this point.
No,
but,
that's fine.
People can look it up.
I think these things
it.
might come into argument as this case moves forward.
Yeah, I think this is really one, even though it's just at the really early stages, this is one for us to keep our eyes on. And it sort of goes with the whole administration's perspective. And really, the courts and the legislatures have really set this conflict up. This was bound to happen at some point. When a lot of these decisions were coming out about sexual orientation and gender identity, that it was going to conflict with other people's rights. Religious rights. And like I said, this is one for us to keep our eyes on.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you have it. Don't forget to download your Ready, Aim, Fire. We will be back here next week at 7:30 Central Time. I'm going to go and meet you, Mikey, out in the hall. We're in different rooms. We got a program here with Melissa Pesh from Ogletree Deacons as our legal counterpart today. And you still have time to join us if you like to just get to that AIM website and join the program, and let's hear what Mikey has to say. Bert, have a good day. Producer Nick, thanks for making us look great. Until then, go out and be good to someone. Bye-bye.
Thank you once again for tuning in to This Week at Work. If you enjoy the show, please like it, share it, and make sure it's on your calendar every week. Ask your burning questions anytime and let us know what topics you'd like us to cover. Just go to hrask.org and be sure to leave a review wherever you catch our show to help other HR pros find us as well. We'll see you next week when we discuss what's happening this week at work.